An FSB officer was killed. The General Staff's view on transferring Air Force aviation technicians to the infantry. Let's talk to Roman Svitin. Mr. Svitin, good evening. We are glad to see you, and glory to Ukraine. FSS officer was found murdered in the Russian Defense Ministry in Moscow. This was reported by the Russian media. It is possible that someone from the FSB did it, although he could have been recruited by our special services. What possible versions can you give us? It's too dangerous. It's a 100% risk of disclosure of our intelligence confidentiality. It is unlikely that this was the case. It was an FSB officer who entered the territory of the army. This is a long-standing enmity between the special services and the army, especially when an FSB officer, Russian garbage, is on military territory. He is already under serious pressure, and any negative or crossing of red lines causes the army to react. I think this is an internal problem, and it is not solvable. For now, the FSB officers will be on the territory of the army units. Ministry of Defense is an army unit. Mr. Roman, it was loud in Russia today. AFU carried out massive attack on Russian military facilities. Objects at a distance of up to 1,100 kilometers were affected. The General Staff of AFU reported. I propose to start with the first goal. This is the Bryansk chemical plant, which is 12 kilometers from Bryansk. This company, according to Russian sources, specializes in the production of ammunition, including shells for Grad, Tornado C, Smerch MLRS, and high-explosive aircraft bombs. How can the strike affect Russia's military power? This is a plant that works with gunpowder and explosives. In particular, it equips Russian munitions. There is a wide range of munitions, dozens of them. The main focus is the production of explosives and their calibration for Russian military equipment. One of the main tasks is to get to the best option, probably underground bunkers where gunpowder and explosives are stored and need protection from airstrikes. Despite the defense, they were hit, probably by Storm Shadow missiles, with Scalp, DM-160 missiles and attacks at a range of over 100 kilometers to Bryansk. Our armed forces, aviation, and missile forces executed a combined tactic. Bryansk came under attack, where missile fragments damaged the Kremlin L enterprise, according to local authorities. We mentioned the Bryansk chemical plant and the Kremlin L enterprise, which is not the first time it has been under attack, as it is Russia's second largest producer of electronics for military purposes. Mr. Roman, you mentioned ATACMS. Could these missiles and Storm Shadow have been used in this case? Also, could you remind us what is known about the Silny L plant? This plant produces the element base for Russian electronics. Chips, microcircuits, are trying to grow crystals. One of the main tasks is to destroy at a distance of more than 100 kilometers. ATACMS and possibly Storm Shadow were probably used. ATACMS works optimally at a distance of up to 150 kilometers. We don't need 300-kilometer ATACMS. The 90-mile ones we have that work with HIMARS when they enter the target area are enough. Kremlin L and Bryansk Kimprom are close to the front line, which makes it possible to work on them after permission is granted to use long-range weapons against Russian tanks. We have nothing to hit further than 300 kilometers. ATACMS has a range of up to 300 kilometers. While Storm Shadow and Scalp have a range of up to 250 kilometers. If from the borderline, launchers and aircraft are more than 100 kilometers away. That is, the plus is 150 to 200 kilometers. We need long-range weapons because Russia's main military facilities are located between the Volga and the Urals. These are ranges from 600 to 2,000 kilometers. At least missiles for the F-16 associated with the dumping systems. We need JAS missiles with a range of 600 to 950 kilometers. Mr. Roman, we would like to address our audience. You can write your question, and don't forget to write where you are watching us from. Thank you for your activity. Mr. Roman, about the second damaged facility. A week ago, the Crystal Oil Depot near Ingles on the left bank of the Volga was successfully attacked. This is a non-state reserve storage facility that stores fuel for strategic bombers. The Russians spent 5 days trying to extinguish the fire, and a few days ago reported that it had been eliminated, but now the situation is repeating itself. Operators of the 14th Regiment of Unmanned Aerial Vehicles of the Armed Forces of Ukraine repeatedly attacked the infrastructure of the Angels II airfield in Saratov region, including an oil depot. In this case, I would like to talk about air defense systems. Why was it possible to hit this military facility for the second time? What is wrong with the air defense of the Russian occupiers, which failed to re-protect this airfield? We waited until everything burned down, and Russian firefighters did it. They did not put out anything. After the fire burned out, the SBU reconnoitered the facilities and completed the combat mission. The attack was large-scale. At least 3 facilities in this area were hit. Saratov and Engels are one city divided by the Volga. Saratov on the western right bank and Engels on the left eastern bank. Engels too is right next door. The strike was a combined attack on an oil refinery in Saratov, a fuel depot for Engels Airfield, and Engels itself. The attack was carried out with the help of drones, including bombs dropped in the mode of Queen drones, which were quite effective. Why was the enemy air defense system penetrated? For example, against planning bombs, in particular 100-kilogram ones, there are high explosive aircraft bombs with different fillings. If a bomb is fitted with a correction system and wings for control, the question arises of how to deliver it. We have drones, like UG-22, which were used to deliver bombs, dropped like kamikaze drones, destroying the Russian production of Shaheds near Kazan in Alabuga.
Дрона «Камикадзе» уничтожили в прошлом году. Мы видели эти эпические кадры уничтожения российского производства шахедов в Алабуге, аж под Казанью.
Here, the same bomb, but dropped with wings without a drone, reached its target and accomplished its mission. Again, Crystal and Ingalls and the refinery were struck, and some drones were sent to Ingalls itself. Confirmation is expected within a day.
Плюс НПЗ, и сейчас в течение, наверное, суток будет подтверждение, потому что часть беспилотников пошла на сам Энгельс.
There may be evidence of damage to airfield equipment and aircraft based there.
Аэродромно-технического оборудования, самолетов, которые там базируются.
At least 5 types of aircraft are currently in use at the base. The Tu-160 and the fuel for which the T-8 burned on a Crystal. Tu-95 are the main carriers of X-101 missiles. Tu-22 are the carriers of X-22 missiles. And the Su-34 and Su-35 are Russian tactical aircraft for dropping CABMs. They fly from there to Ukraine. The destruction of warehouses with these bombs has already been confirmed. Mr. Roman Kazan was the target. After the visit of the Ukrainian drones, the Kazan org synthesis plant, the only high-strength plastics manufacturer in Russia, a 2.2-kilometer facility, caught fire. The target of the attack was a liquid gas storage facility. Why was this plant chosen? What do you know about it, apart from its uniqueness? This plant produces hulls for Shaheds. This is plastic, including the types used to make Shaheds. One of the main problems now is the Russian Shaheds. We monitor the entire logistics chain, production, machinery, warehouses, and deliveries. The Russians started destroying the buildings on January 4th or 5th. They catch our drones, 1/3 of which are sent to the places where Shaheds are produced. The Ugloplastic plant in Kazan is one of them. They produce many types of plastic for the Russian aviation and missile industry. It produces parts of coatings and assemblies for 5th-generation aircraft, including carbon plastics, to reduce radio signals. This is a blow to the aerospace industry, but it is a good one. The key points in the production process are calculated, without which they cannot function. The entire production facility is a large area with machinery, but it will not work. This is a hub of oil recovery mechanisms at refineries that are being attacked. If this mechanism is out of order, the plant shuts down. At the medical plants, they hit the oxygen shop, putting the entire plant out of commission. The medical plant cannot operate without oxygen, and the gas treatment unit is the key point of the plant. The choice was made after reconnaissance. Mr. Roman, there have also been reports of Ukrainian drone attacks in Tula, Voronezh, Rostov, Orel, and Tambov regions. There has never been such a large-scale attack on Russia in recent times. More than 200 drones in 12 regions of the Russian Federation. Perhaps that's not all. Early reports of an attack on an oil pumping station in Tatarstan near Almyevsk. Mr. Roman, to summarize, this is the first massive strike by Ukraine against military targets deep in Russia in 3 years, using various means of destruction. This is a blow not only from a military, but also from a reputational point of view to Putin. Almyevsk is where the Russian oil pumping and production system is located. By the way, the Nefteprogruzhba starts from there. Tatarstan and Bashkortostan have many oil production facilities, which then flows through small streams into the Druzhba pipeline, which pumps oil to Europe. We are also partially helping the Russian economy financially to keep it from drying up. That is, we pump the same oil, this Tatar oil, so to speak, to Hungary. This pipe carries 300,000 barrels of oil every day. At $60 per barrel, this is about $18 million per day. One of the mechanisms to stop production and pumping is to destroy the stations that create pressure. The pumping stations create pressure in the pipe, and the oil travels through the pipeline for 1,000 kilometers. There are more than one such station. Recently, there have been several attacks on this pipeline, particularly in the Unesha and Desna areas, with the destruction of pumping and control stations. It begins with Almyevsk, at least one of its sources. The task is to destroy Russia's hydrocarbon infrastructure, which was not done last year. We started beautifully last year, but then someone stopped us saying, ouch, 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 how come? Russian hydrocarbons will go to zero. It seems that someone is already leaving, perhaps from the White House or Bankova Street. This is possible because our generals were hardly given direct instructions from the White House. Probably it was relayed through big specialists on Bankova Street. Therefore, the generals were given free rein, and they began to fulfill their combat mission. Now we have something, although the promised millions of drones are not yet visible. If there are 100 or 200 drones every day, then we can say that the promised millions of drones have finally been fulfilled. Before that, it will be just promises, although serious efficiency is already evident. The sufficient number of long-range drones and mechanisms to hit the Russian rear gives us hope that this year we can stop the Russian economy. To stop at least a third of the mechanisms that support the Russian economy. I want to believe that, Mr. Roman. I would like to ask our viewers to write words of support and gratitude to our defenders who are destroying enemy military facilities used against Ukraine and our people. Mr. Roman, let's move on to the next topic. The Ukrainian Armed Forces Command has begun transferring aviation personnel and anti-aircraft system maintenance to infantry units. Aviation technicians of the 114th Brigade reported that their unit received an order to transfer more than 200 technicians to infantry units. Earlier, about 250 people had already been transferred from the unit. The new order renders the MiG-29 Armed Tactical Aviation Brigade incapable of combat due to the lack of specialists to maintain it. Meanwhile, we have already received an official response from AFU. They deny the transfer of aviation specialists to the infantry. This is in message of General Staff. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has officially stated that there were no plans to transfer the severely shortage of aviation engineers to the infantry. The Ukrainian Air Force is increasing the number of technical and flight personnel. We see two different situations, but there is a video message from the Air Force. Received a different answer from the General Staff of AFU. How did you react to the appeal of the Sergeant of the 114th Brigade and the official response of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine? When sugar is put into a chocolate bar instead of chocolate, it is not always the technologist's fault. It was mainly the fault of the chocolate suppliers who failed to deliver on time, and the technologists had to replace it with sugar. Then there are problems for those who consume it. This is the same picture now. If the General Staff gives the order to transfer some soldiers from the Air Force to the ground forces, this is not a problem that the General Staff solves. The problem is the inability of the Ministry of Defense and politicians to create a serious flow into the armed forces through recruitment or mobilization. There is no serious system for building a professional army. The army should be freely recruited, contractual, motivated, and professional. Politicians and the Ministry of Defense failed to create all this. The General Staff is trying to solve the systemic mistakes of politicians and the Defense Ministry. But these methods can negatively affect the armed forces, especially the aviation component, which is fundamental in the third millennium. It is impossible to replace the technicians and engineers who support the flights and combat readiness of aviation systems. On average, there are about 20 engineering staff members per pilot. There are about 20 people per pilot with a certain gradation. Everyone is important in ensuring flight safety and aviation readiness, so they cannot be taken away. These people were not trained for such tasks. Training an engineer can take longer than training a pilot. Because there are technological aspects that require specialized specialists, who are few and far between and take a long time to learn. Retraining an engineer as a maintenance engineer takes longer than a flight engineer. We need to take care of pilots, technicians, and engineers so that they can perform the tasks they were trained for.
воздушных войск, вернее, воздушных сил однозначно должны выполнять те задачи, на которые они учились.
The same criticism applies to sailors and all branches of the armed forces.
Любой вид вооруженных сил.
These are specialists in the army. Infantry, like attack aircraft, must be highly skilled, just like fighter pilots, to perform complex tasks.
Для выполнения штурмовых задач, то есть штурмовики, они уровня летчиков-истребителей должны подготавливаться.
This is a process that includes genetic selection, training, and other aspects. You cannot just grab people off the street and send them to the infantry. They will not be able to cope with the task, as well as the technical staff, which is not trained for infantry missions.
Который знает, как подготовить технику к полету и ставить им задачу пехоты.
Why is this a problem? The problem is with politicians who have not decided to strengthen the real infantry. What is infantry? The queen of the fields is infantry. These are our internal security forces. This is the infantry, because they are motivated and professional fighters performing combat missions inside the country. We need to launch a mechanism for the formation of ground troops, law enforcement, and related organizations, including security. They guard one iron by the dozens, hiding under the armor, even though they are healthy and can handle weapons. The same applies to the protection of bridges and other tasks performed by private companies, which use armor to hide behind for these purposes. These forces should be incorporated into the ground forces, and then the Queen of Roads will become infantry. The General Staff has no right to make such a decision. This is not only their responsibility. It is up to politicians to make the decision. When we see the imbalance, we realize that specialists are being taken from aviation to the ground forces for other tasks. They have narrow or incompetent specialists. Who among the specialists can calculate the angle of narrow specialization or professionalism? The training is tailored to a specific type of troops. Specialists are recruited from different branches of the armed forces. Until the systemic error in the deployment of troops and law enforcement is resolved, the distortions will continue. Remember, sailors and submariners will be assigned to perform infantry tasks. Mr. Roman, according to the military, this is the third large-scale transfer of Air Force personnel, so it is not the first time. This is confirmed information. The brigades are losing hundreds of specialists with each wave. The information is confirmed.
У кого сколько с какой бригады, тут точно уже не будем говорить, но то, что это подтвержденная информация, так это точно.
Aviation brigades are losing specialists of different levels. It doesn't matter who. There are still losses and transfers of troops from one branch to another. Mr. Roman, Defense Express writes that Russia uses about 300 aircraft of various types in combat operations against Ukraine every day. Russia's total fleet of military aircraft includes nearly 1,400 units, including 1,169 in the VKS and 208 in the Navy's naval aviation, according to the military balance. Russian naval aviation is also used in the war against Ukraine from the airfields of the temporarily occupied Crimea. The logical question is how Russia uses the remaining 1,100 aircraft, since the fleet includes not only combat aircraft, but also military transport and other aircraft.
До складу якого, щоправда, входять не тільки бойові, але і до того ж військово-транспортні літаки і інші літаки забезпечення.
Russia will definitely not use all of its aviation. The front is only over 1,000 kilometers, so it is unrealistic to use all aviation. They are using, but not 300 airplanes. They use several dozen aircraft. In total, they can be involved or accompanied. Dozens of planes, not hundreds or thousands, perform combat missions. The narrow width of the front and dense air defense allow us to shoot down Russian planes if they approach our borders at the same time as missiles.
Эти 1500 российских самолетов, если они одномоментно будут, допустим, задействованы или будут подходить к нашим рубежам, мы их отминусуем примерно так, как минусуем ракеты.
Sometimes we shot down 100 missiles a day during serious attacks, with air defense capable of destroying both missiles and airplanes equally. The rocket is a mini airplane with a smaller EPR, but at a similar speed, 800-900 kilometers per hour as airplanes. A missile and an airplane have similar speed and heat signatures, with slight differences in EPR, but the countermeasures are the same. We can destroy the Russian Air Force, as well as all Russian cruise missiles. That's why the Russians are afraid to use these planes. They mainly use Army aviation and tactical aircraft, such as Su-25s, which are thrown to the slaughter. Or Su-34 to drop missiles and bombs, covered by Su-35. That's several dozen planes a day. They cannot do more. The density of air defense in Ukraine has increased significantly since 2022, by 3 to 4 times, although we would like to see more.
Нам бы, конечно, побольше, но тем не менее плотность ПВО у нас возросла, если считать от нашей базовой там в 2022 году, раза в 3-4.
Mr. Roman, thank you for this conversation. Roman Svitin, pilot instructor, reserve colonel of the Ukrainian Army. I'd like to ask viewers to write a comment on the topics discussed. Please write words of gratitude to Roman for his daily professional analysis.